hear them. Good
Okay.
morning, Project Kazimierz listener. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever time of the day or night it is live. And also welcome to the Project Kazimierz Facebook Live audience who will be watching this on Thursday morning. I think it's today is the 8th of November. 2018 in a country called Poland in a continent called Europe. Today we've got a very special guest on the show. That's Paul or Pavel Kulon, who I know pretty well. But rather than me introduce him, Paul or Pavel, could you introduce yourself to our audience? Imagine the kind of context. It's like half social, half professional, not a job interview, but also giving slightly more information than if you just were saying hi to someone at a party.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Richard, thanks for the invitation to this podcast. I'm glad we're doing it. So formally and professionally, I'm head of operations at the foundation supporting OMGKRK. We're working to grow the innovation ecosystem here in Krakow. Beyond that, very active, I would say, in the Krakow community. It's actually about 2 years to the day that I moved back to Krakow after living in Chicago for most of my life. And it's been a great 2 years in Krakow. The city's been great to me. I think with OMGKRK, we've achieved a lot of things and met a lot of outstanding people here in Krakow. Outside of work, I really enjoy nature and plants, along with electronic music, and generally having a really nice time.
Great. Okay. And, obviously, it's great to have you on the show. You're a key figure in the Krakow startup ecosystem, and we're going to focus on that a lot during this conversation. But we're also interested in the journey, how people end up here in our wonderful city. And so maybe if you just give a bit of context of when you were first in Krakow and when you came back to Krakow, and how you feel about Krakow as a place to be.
Yeah, so I was actually born in Krakow in '88, but at a very young age, my family moved to Chicago, I along with them, and that's where I lived for 25 years, basically, until 2 years ago when I moved back. I have family here, so I visited several times over the years, and in the brief moments I was here, I really enjoyed it. Of course, visiting is different than living somewhere, but I have to say that, and most people who know me know that I'm pretty positive on Krakow, especially in comparison to living in an American city, which I thought was more challenging and had a lot more difficulties. So there are a lot of things in the States, in Chicago. Finished university, started a career. I actually have, I would say, a humanities background. I studied liberal arts in international relations. But I actually think, in retrospect, this was an outstanding degree because it sort of scaled my worldview, taught me critical thinking skills, built some emotional intelligence skills, learned to appreciate diversity, comparative analysis, and with this sort of framework, I think it allowed me to learn many things very quickly. And although now I'm in the center of the startup community, 2 years ago when I moved to Krakow, I didn't know what a startup was. So Krakow has, I would say, a solid startup school just taking place in the community, where I would say 100% of my startup knowledge has come from the community, events, some further exploration and research on my part. But I think that Krakow is really an outstanding city, and people should consider it. I think on a daily basis, with public transportation, um, cleanliness, security, the very basics of life that we deal with every day, Krakow is really outstanding. One of the things I would say is that Krakow is still very associated with the old city and a sort of tourism-based economy based on the sort of rich heritage we have, which is outstanding. But it sort of is anti-change. You don't see too much contemporary modern architecture or too many other risks taking place. And I'm really happy that there's this startup community which is very innovative, thinking about the future, disruptive, that is still managing to grow in this city, but with these sort of unique values of community, friendliness. I would say Krakow is full of very nice people. I think it's very easy to work with anyone who has some initiative and energy and motivation will be able to find their place and make an impact in the city. And I would say it's very accessible in that way. So how about that?
Okay, so if you so thanks for that background, and probably for some of our listeners are here in town, and so for them it may just be a quick refresher. But if you could describe maybe the three main features of what you regard the Krakow startup community as, like, no, don't describe everything, but like, say if someone who didn't know about Krakow and said, what's the startup community like, and you started the sentence, well, the three most important planks of the startup community are, what would be the three things that you particularly draw attention to?
So I think a big factor is Krakow is actually the top destination for outsourcing in Europe. And there's a huge market of corporations that are doing their back-end services, including many IT services here in Krakow. And this has made, I would say, Krakow a more international city, has made it in a way a sort of IT tech city. There's a lot of jobs, stable corporate jobs in this sector.
Okay. So what's that got to do with?
Because I would say that this is the sort of foundation of the tech community. Is actually, I would say that if there wasn't this huge corporate presence here, I would say there'd be even less startup activity happening. But so evolving out of that is that there's a lot of outstanding technology talent, developers in Krakow. People still perceive it as a place for cost savings, and to a degree that may be true. But I would say that there's a huge tech pool of tech talent, of programmers and coders. The leadership and sales teams are not always here in Krakow. So we're this tech city that's needs to sort of become more entrepreneurial, sales orientated, and innovative. And I would say that the startup community is at the forefront and trying to pivot from being just some sort of one big software house for Europe.
Okay, but just to cut in there. So if we're just trying to keep it fairly sort of bullet point like, so we've got one feature of Krakow that people might not get is the huge tech BPO outsourcing movement here, and that creates a kind of base where there's a lot of software tech talent in town because of that. So that's one thing. What are the other two, let's say, two main features of the startup community, not in terms of what it needs to do, but where we are now?
Yeah. So I would say that the startup community is very active with events. I think that there's a huge amount of choice and options for learning and meeting new people in the city in a variety of environments and settings. And there's basically an event to choose from almost on a daily basis. And everyone, there's so many events because teams are growing. People have some sort of purpose and agenda for having these events, so things are happening, and it's very easy to show up to one of these events, meet someone, learn something, and develop yourself. So I would say that the community, in terms of people getting together, sharing knowledge, talking to each other, socializing, is also a big component. I would say that the tech and startup community has a large amount of events that are just taking place. It's active, it's happening. I would say it's fairly visible, and this is another, I guess, human component. So
Okay, I'm just putting in the for the Facebook Live viewers, I'm posting links in the comments under the live. I've just put a link up to the Crossweb calendar, which is quite impressive. I'm looking at it now. The Crossweb calendar shows there are 47 events coming up on the and that's just during up to well, I can see dozens in November. We're on the 7th of November now. So today we've got the 8th of November. I can see there's a JavaScript meetup, there's an IT roadshow, there's an IT quality event, there's a Git what Git is programming event, and that's just today, and that's just in the tech community. There are also a lot of other events going on as well. So number one, we've got the sort of the thriving, as you say, number one in Europe outsourcing city, which has created, I think it's more than 50,000 jobs. I saw a ranking from Aspire that maybe it was 70,000 jobs in that sector in Krakow. Then the second thing is the thriving event scene where literally there's something to go to every day. And what would you say the third important thing is?
um,
And you can be very immodest now and maybe talk about the role of the organization. And if you don't know what to say, talk about OMGKRK, the organization you lead.
Well, we can, because I mean, our whole thing is trying to be OMGKRK is trying to be an umbrella organization for this entire innovation ecosystem, and I think our reach, impact, and value is growing, and I think we have a lot of things that are now like past MVP that are gonna start really making even a bigger impact into 2019. But for anyone who's interested in doing research about Krakow's startup community themselves directly, I recommend putting in the hashtag OMGKRK into any search bar. There's a discussion group with almost 6,000 people that's very active, and this is just person to person information exchange, grassroots stuff. And on our website, we've tried to really make a little profile for over 200 organizations and institutions in this innovation ecosystem. We've tried to do some sort of featured events to help people choose which event is best for them. I think we are slowly making a bigger impact in saying that startups is a credible career path for young people, and we try to be a springboard for early stage teams, for young event organizers, and increasingly trying to also give value for more experienced entrepreneurs looking for whatever it may be, talent, new networks, new opportunities.
Great, great. Yeah, just to cut in there, because just to give a bit of context, if you go, I've put a link up to the OMGKRK website. Reading across the top of that webpage, you see there's events, a database, there's the OMGKRK Academy, there's the Entrepreneur Club, there's a blog, there's a resources section, and there's an about. And from also you can sign up for a newsletter. I also put in the comment thread the link to the Facebook group that I call it a kind of notice board for the startup community in Krakow, because as you said, there's around, I think right now it's 5,688 members, and so that gives you a sense of the different ways you can engage with the startup community. And as someone who's actively involved in this area, the nice thing about having OMGKRK is that if someone wants to make contact with the startup community, it's a point of reference. It's like someone to call, and you could be. So what sort of, if you think of yourself as a kind of ambassador for the startup community, what sort of things how could you engage someone listening in some other part of the world? How could they engage with the Krakow startup community? What could they offer you, and what could you offer them if they were getting in touch?
You're saying for people not in Krakow, how to get engaged with the Krakow startup community?
Or let's say if they engage with you, well, how can you help someone from another city who's involved in a startup community, and how can you what can they get from you, and what can you give them as OMGKRK?
Okay. For anyone who wants to see what's going on in the Krakow innovation ecosystem, I think the best place to start would be on the OMGKRK website in the database. There you have the list of Krakow startups and software houses and events and institutions. And more and more, we have contact information for these companies in that database to allow people to directly achieve their goals and contact people. But should that information not be up there, we can give more information about anything that someone may find interesting. If someone is outside of Krakow, researching Krakow innovation ecosystem, they may be trying to build a team here or hire a team here. This happens a lot, and we can I guess help people enter the Krakow market. OMGKRK has over this year invited a number of speakers from beyond Krakow, from Warsaw, from Ukraine, Germany, and our mission is to build a world-class innovation ecosystem, which means we want to have knowledge and people coming from outstanding ecosystems all over the world. And in terms of our event production capacity, we can deliver value for speakers as well as audiences. If you want to see what startups are happening in Krakow, we have a database of that too. We recently have an event, Bobble Dragon's Cave Pitch, where we highlighted 6 early stage startups that are slightly past MVP, trying to raise an angel round of funding. So if any investors are interested in seeing what's happening here, check out the Bobble Dragon's Cave Pitch blog post. So those are some things we can do, and we actually have I would say that this year we've tried to make a strategic partnership with the Kiev innovation ecosystem and the Berlin innovation ecosystem, and Warsaw as well.
Kiev, for those listening in other parts of the world, Poland's between Germany and Ukraine. Also to the east, to the northeast, we've got Belarus. To the northeast, we've got Lithuania and a little bit of of the Russian Republic called Kaliningrad, but Ukraine is very, very important to Poland. Many historic links, and right now, thanks to the war in the east of Ukraine, there are many Ukrainians who've come to Poland. I shouldn't say thanks to, because of. So Kiev is the capital city of Ukraine, and so Berlin to the west, the capital city of Germany, and Kiev to the east, the capital city of Ukraine. This helps us strengthen our regional footprint, because obviously each country has got its own very strong national identity. But if you're looking from America or from Asia, we're very close together on the map, aren't we?
Yes, we sure are.
Okay, and so that's very good. And if you think of the let's say, and if you look on the list of institutions on OMGKRK in the database, you've got the startups, software houses, co-working spaces, organizations and institutions, recruiters, Krakow education. Obviously, we do have some investment funds here in Krakow, and over time, for sure. I'd love to have them on the podcast, but there's a bit of a. How do you feel about financial institutions? Because normally you would expect, given the number of startups, the number of investment funds, you would expect banks and financial institutions to be all over Krakow, and in my experience, they're not really. I mean, the banks here in Krakow, UBS, HSBC, State Street, these are back office processes of global financial institutions rather than head offices or regional offices of investment institutions. Do you think we've got some way to go with financial institutions here in Krakow?
You mean as investors of capital, or as
exactly. So seed funds, VC funds, or let's say maybe investors representing angel organizations or private individuals. Let's say it is striking in the number of, if I think of the number of times I've met a banker or a VC fund representative at startup community events, with the honorable exception of Innovation Nest, who for example, Chris Kobilecki is hosting Open Coffee Krakow on the 15th of November, I think, next Thursday, so exactly a week today. He'll be, and he's deeply involved in one of our local seed funds. But apart from Innovation Fund and occasionally Satus, we don't see that much investor presence here in Krakow, would you say? I mean, there are loads of startups, so somehow the capital is here, but we don't see so much. Do you agree with me that we don't see so much institutional investor activity here?
Yes, I think that there's a long way to go, because yes, beyond Innovation Nest, which recently invested in Krakow startup Callpage. There is a lack of capital. I believe Krakow Technology Park has an internal fund that invests in some of their teams. I believe there's also Bitspiration Booster that
That's right.
that has some sort of fund, and then has invested in some sort of batch of startups, but that may be it. So I think that there's a lack of business angels with people, experienced entrepreneurs who have done their business, and now have made some capital, and now want to invest it, and want to take some risk. There's not too much in that. There's some of these funds that we mentioned, and in terms of some sort of huge consortiums, I would say there's none. So there's a limited amount of money, and this our event, the Dragon's Cave pitch, is trying to be that event that will, at least once a year, attract investors to Krakow. And even this year, which was the second year doing this event, we did have, and thanks to your network, Richard, someone from Coben Angels, which represents a network of business angels.
That's right.
meetup group from Poznań, Innovation Nest was there. So definitely, OMGKRK is trying to invite capital here, but the investors want to see the decks and the data and the startups that are gonna pitch before they come.
Yep.
And all
So,
the
so, so,
all
so
the
just to cut in there. So, I mean, in terms of opportunities for our listeners, the Project Kazimierz community in a lot of cities around the world, the problem is somewhat different. That there's huge numbers of investors chasing limited number of good projects. Obviously, we don't want to exaggerate. There are loads of pitch decks, being sort of automated dog food online, which really isn't going to fly. But in terms of good hard tech startups, there are plenty in town. But it's very striking if we think of the better known Krakow startups Base, which recently was acquired by Zendesk. Their investors were not local. Brainly, which I think has. It's either 50 million active users a year or 100. It's certainly, the largest social learning platform for school kids, and I think now globally, Brainly is number one in the world. That they didn't get local funding. Estimo had a New York fund, Javelin Partners. So I'd say the entrepreneurs and the startups are here, but very often either it's bootstrap, so it's at really quite low level. You get the Applicate story, which turned into Base, which turned into now Zendesk. Zendesk acquired them. We can't say Applicate was a local software house that built a product on the side which succeeded. I think they went through Y Combinator, although not with that product. So the comment is, we've definitely got a startup community based around events, but there's still plenty of opportunities for I'd say organized capital. Informally, I'd say there is some money around, but money is part of the equation. Just coming to events, I mentioned open coffee, which, as you know, I'm involved in, and you loyally support. In terms of cyclical events, maybe you could describe, because I'm a bit too close to open coffee to be objective about it. So could you describe what that is, and what you might call the more regular events in the startup community, and what role they play?
Yeah, so starting with Open Coffee, it's every other week, a sort of semi-informal unmeeting that starts at 8 a.m., which is a unique selling point because most events are in the evenings. This one's at 8 a.m., and a bunch of entrepreneurs, innovators, marketers, NGO people get in a room to quickly pitch what they're working on, what they're looking for, and how they can help. After an hour of going around the room and putting up websites on the screen, we enter an informal session where you can go up to the person you find most interesting and continue the conversation. Open Coffee via strong word of mouth and heroic consistency, I think is a really nice event that I encourage everyone to go to. And it was actually the place where I got my start in this entire thing in Krakow. This is why I attend so loyally, because it gave a lot to me. And try to remember that every second Thursday morning at 7 a.m.
Yeah, and interestingly, I'm going to post a link. There's a very interesting talk from TEDx Tarnów which I'm just going to share a link to now, by David Ostrowski. Sorry, that's just my YouTube kicking off on a separate channel. Apologies for the background noise. I was just copying a link. David Ostrowski was a very important leader of a previous iteration of the startup community. He was working in Rynek Główny 12, Google for entrepreneurs in developer relations, but informally he was one of the leaders of the startup community when Google were in town, and he gave a talk at TEDx Tarnów. Tarnów is a city about I suppose, 80, 100 kilometers to the east of Krakow, which has got the classic small city complex. He's from Tarnów, and he kicked off his talk by saying that all the smart people are leaving. Anyone ambitious gets out of Tarnów. The only good, nothing good happens in our city. And he was talking about how to revitalize a small town into being a positive place. And one of the things we're talking to is doing an open coffee type event, but he was describing what's needed, which was, he talked about cyclical events. You need to have regular events so that people can sort of drop in and out, because people go through different points in their in their personal lives. For example, you can be super active in a startup community, then you get funding and you start your startup, and then you get very, very busy. You don't have time to be engaged for a while because you're busy. For example, maybe you can. So the regularity is very important, because it gives a sort of a gateway into the community. But people have different stages in the life cycle, and as I said, we have Innovation Nest, the Chris Kobyleski from Innovation Nest hosting different meetings. We have different guest hosts, and it's also, I'd say, important to refer to the journey. I asked you in your personal journey, you said you weren't involved in the startup community when you got here. Now you're a key figure in it, and we're very aware of the fact that people are at different stages. You might have someone who's in a corporation, working for a large company. We call them corporations here, which isn't possibly what people in America or the UK would call them, but we call them the corporatie, right? People working in the big companies, but they've got a side project and they want to get into business, and coming to something like Open Coffee can be their gateway to start meeting people, co-founders, and so on. So Open Coffee is a morning meeting. What about what about your evening meetings that you go to? You said most of the events are in the evening. What does an evening startup community meeting look like?
Well, I would encourage everyone who wants to know about events, upcoming events, to go on omgkrk.com and sign up for this newsletter. We actually do put a fair amount of time and energy in trying to present, a good amount of the upcoming events all in one place, so you can really look and see which one you want. If the newsletter is not for you, we publish the same thing as a blog post every Monday in what we call the pitch. So I don't know. We can just look at what was in there in the most recent pitch as a sort of sampling of what's.
I'm just putting a link up on the screen so that people can see that. Just a moment, it'll go up in a moment. I had a link to Open Coffee a moment ago. Now there's a link going up to the community blog, and I'll post a link in the show notes as well. Yeah, so you can either go there now or you can look later, but if you just talk us through it.
Yeah, so this is just off the top of my head, but for example, yesterday, and talking about baking, HSBC did a disruption baking event, because I think they understand that startups and fintech is catching up with them, or is potentially going to disrupt their industry. So I think they want to integrate and co-opt some of these fintechs before they get too big. So shout out to HSBC for trying to stay ahead of the curve. We have a startup weekend Krakow coming up at the end of the month at Krakow Technology Park, where you can turn if you're a sort of beginner and you want to turn your idea into MVP, minimum viable product, that's the weekend for you. It looks like there's some outstanding mentors that are going to be there.
Thank you very much. As apparently I'm going to be one.
Even though you haven't been announced yet. So this is an outstanding organization by Mateusz Cebula, who's also part of the OMGKRK board and head of the incubator at KPT. I think people will have a chance to interact with really the top entrepreneurs in Krakow. So that's at the end of the month. I know we have an event coming up from Making Waves called Making Software. That's going to be on coming up not too far from now. Software related event. LinkedIn Local just had another event, which at Hevra, which is I think some sort of light social professional networking. What else did we have in there? Global Entrepreneurship Week is coming up, animated by Małopolska, the regional government, and I think there'll be several events associated with that. And you know that's a good start there. I think there's going to be an event about events coming up for event organizers. There's 3D meetup, whole bunch of J Labs has IT Academy for programmers, Crash Mondays, really for whatever sector in this tech industry you're in. There's definitely an event for you. And that's not even mentioning some of the OMGKRK events that we have. And I think something that we try to do is with our events is to try to have sort of topics that can be engaging to anyone from any sector, any branch of this tech industry, primarily around entrepreneurship, but really try to be sort of really interesting and engaging, how to think like an entrepreneur, innovation, ecosystem leaders from the region. OMGKRK Academy is really a mix of TED Talk and Y Combinator startup school to inspire and educate the next generation of entrepreneurs in Krakow. And we also have a sort of a twin event called Entrepreneur Club, which aims to do the same thing but with a little more creative twist. This is maybe for more marketers, designers, people in the arts, creative industry, who also, can be very innovative, very creative, but don't have even don't have much grasp on a business model or some sort of business fundamentals. And basically, we just want people to be able to manage and motivate themselves and make a living off of that. And these are what our events are all about. We also have some big community-wide parties. We had one in the summer, and it looks like we're going to have a holiday one as well coming up in December. So at least on the OMGKRK event calendar, first and second week of December, we'll have something for you guys.
Yes, you mentioned. Sorry, just to come back to the culture of the community. I think it's when a few months ago now we had Dominic Ziegler who's the technology correspondent of the Economist magazine. I think it was Dominic Ziegler, because I think the organizers of a big corporate event in the Congress Center contacted you, and you put him in touch with me, and he came along to Open Coffee, and he said Open Coffee Krakow, and he said at the event, what he liked was the fact that the startup community wasn't so commercialized, that in some bigger cities, I think he referred to Stockholm and Dublin, the startup community events had turned into a kind of business where people were charging money for events and actually making a living out of organizing events. And very often it's quite rare to find a commercial startup community event in the sense that the organizers of the events regard it as a business. And there's a sort of culture of being helpful, that people just like to help each other. Would you say that's true and a good thing? Because I've heard mixed opinions about that. Do you think our event, it's true that most events are free or so low cost that you don't need money to go to them, and do you think that's a good thing?
So on the point, if people are helpful, I would say yes. People are very helpful. People will definitely give you a chance. I mean, it's on you to be even if you're asking for help, to be a team, a project, a person worthy of being helped. But people will give you the chance to pitch to them, and if you have even some traction or a good idea, you will be helped, and that's a fantastic thing. I do strongly agree with that, and experience that personally, even with very experienced, busy people who could be spending their time doing other things. Regarding events, I would say the majority are free. I would say the majority are free, and there's there's a couple different angles on the event, on the free events at OMGKRK. I don't. We have not done a paid event as of yet. So, and we've done a lot of events. And the good thing about free events is that there's no disincentive not to come. You don't know anybody. There's no risk. You don't have to spend anything. Actually, you will probably get a free beer as well. This is, I think that there's the event market is so big that people are trying to incentivize people coming. So that's happening. On the other hand, when an event is free, there's not a buy-in from the attendee. And then it also there's not a sort of contract with the organizer. So I think there's a big problem with half of registered people not coming. Half of the people that do come are not registered, and it creates some logistical challenges for event organizers to create an outstanding event.
That's a very. I'll just cut in there because that's a very, very interesting point. That as regular listeners to Project Kazimierz know, I'm a TEDx organizer. I organize TEDx Kazimierz, and this evening we've got a TEDx Kazimierz salon on the environment. 150 people have signed up. We've got, I think now 196 people on the waiting list, and the way. And it's a regular challenge, this no-show issue, and we have a kind of audience curation process where, although in this case people aren't paying, we ask people to fill in questions like, well, one thing is, do you promise to come with a positive attitude, and do you promise to let us know if you can't come, and also, are you interested, or how can you help with the environment? And increasingly, if you're not contributing money, we expect people to commit in terms of giving extra commitment, but it's a challenge. And in terms of quality of events, that's it's obvious. Sometimes people say there are too many events. I remember at some stage when you were early in town, you said to me, Richard, if I went to visit, I could go to an event every evening, and I'm not sure how useful that would be. And people can dive in and out of events, can't they? It doesn't make sense to go to every event, but it somewhat depends what the needs are. And for example, at a recent Krakow Enterprise Mondays at the community announcements open mic stage, some guy stood up and just demonstrated his product, which wasn't a digital product, it was a physical product. And he said, I've got this game, this physical game. I think it was some kind of card game. And he wanted feedback on it. And it's a great idea if you want to get instant feedback. Take it to an event, and you've got a community of pro enterprise people who you can talk to about your product, right?
Oh yeah, that community announcement open mic section is a fantastic opportunity, and I think we are also trying to at OMGKRK figure out and allow people to make a community announcement, digitally to reach more people than just because you have an event. Let's say 100 people come to this event. Recently I've been trying to think about how big is the startup community really in Krakow. Let's say 10,000 people. You have an event for 100 people. You're reaching a tiny fraction of the entire community. That's why trying to do these live streams, make community announcements online, creating databases is really important because you can reach more people. We've been doing a lot of videos, recording a lot of content, taking a lot of pictures, and really trying to expand our website presence, because events are great, but they're for a certain amount of people for a certain amount of time, and it's important for that content and what happens there to reach more people. So absolutely. And yeah,
absolutely, yes. It's a very good point you've made, actually, that the difference between face-to-face and face to face and online, and both are important. It's not that you can take everything online. At some stage, people need to meet each other. They need to talk to each other. You can't expect all business to be online. On the other hand, as we say at Open Coffee, we say the networking takes place before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. And the way we do that is, as with now, we've got a live stream. This live stream of Facebook Live of Project Kazimierz is a kind of experiment because we realized that it's a way of expanding our podcast audience. There are people who are, podcasts are getting increasingly important. There's, the absolute leaders of the, let's say, content-driven marketing, people like Gary Vaynerchuk at VaynerMedia are saying, the podcast is exploding. More and more people are finding there are situations like when they're driving, when they're working out, when they're cooking, when they can't be looking at a screen. If they're looking at a screen when they're driving, we've got many more serious problems than developing our startup community, because you'll get car crashes, but they can listen. So we put the content out audio, but the Facebook Live audience obviously brings it to people who aren't yet into podcasting. At the same time, we run a digital notice board during the meeting via our meetup page. So people who are at the meeting post links to their startup, their event, their project on the meetup page event, just like I'm posting links under this Facebook Live on the Project Kazimierz Facebook Live page, so that people can find it. Because if I say, something like Światowy Tydzień Przedsiębiorczości w Polsce, which means Global Entrepreneurship Week in Poland, there's no way someone who doesn't speak Polish will understand what I said. So, but putting a link there gives people a chance to follow up, and then you've got the possibility after the event, the Facebook Live audience can follow up afterwards. You mentioned the online database. Perhaps you can talk a bit, because I know this is something you've been paying a lot of attention to, and it's a very, very good idea. So what exactly is the online networking concept? Are you using a custom-built tool or some off-the-shelf tool at the moment?
A phenomenal flexible tool that we've been using a lot is called Airtable, which is sort of like a spreadsheet that can also be Google Form, but it's an incredibly versatile tool that we use for a lot of our needs, and it can be a form and also grid view. It's a phenomenal tool, but basically, for example, at event registration, we'll ask people, to share their LinkedIn profile and pick out, are they an entrepreneur, marketer, programmer? So we have slightly better segmentation and understanding of our audience. And then we'll have a section for their community announcement where you can share, what you want with other registered guests and beyond. And then we create a blog post out of that where we share all this information as a sort of post. So if you lose your attention to the speaker at the event, you can check out all the community announcements from other registered guests. When people come in, we ask, we check that they're here, so you can see who's actually at the event and potentially find the person who interests you. So that's one of the things we're testing in terms of base, and then also we're trying to increasingly offer a I would say recruitment service, or present our community with opportunities. And this sort of data on what people are doing will allow us to potentially do better matchmaking between companies and event attendees. That's on the event side. On the database side, we've put in a lot of research on startup software houses, and everyone we can find, and I would say we have definitely the majority of the market share in all these sectors listed on this database. Their institutional data is just basically collected by us, and it sort of offers an overview of everyone in the ecosystem. And this base is actually MVP of what we really see as a digital product in the future, where a lot of things can happen. But of course, the quality of data in these bases is very important, and we're trying to improve the quality of data, including expanded descriptions and contact information to decision makers in this base via the process of membership, which is what I hope we can finish on. So I don't know how much time we have left, but
well, we've got about another 5 or 10 minutes, just because we started slightly late due to technical problems, my end, not your end. Apologies for that. But I think one thing that's really important to emphasize is the balance between the human touch and online. That is obviously fantastic that we are building this online database, but it's really important to have people like you and other startup community leaders. You mentioned Matej Sabula and Krakow Technology Park, KPT, Krakowski Park Technologiczny, also were supported by the city of Krakow, or I say we as OMGKRK because I feel part of OMGKRK, and were supported by the regional authority, Urząd Marszałkowski for Małopolska. The human touch is important because if you're just looking at an entry in a database, you can't necessarily tell from that how serious or committed the leaders of that organization are. But if someone's in touch with someone like you know, for example, quite a high profile startup in Krakow is Coolpage. Anyone who's met Ross Knapp and knows what he's up to knows that this is a highly driven, success orientated company, that it's not just someone who got lucky and raised some money and is going to burn it up and drift away and die. And someone like you can sort of kind of give a reference, can't you, that these guys are definitely going somewhere, whereas some other people, yeah, sure, you can talk to them, but they might not. So you're kind of able to give people a little bit of guidance about who the best people to talk to, or am I giving you too much authority there?
So a couple things that, yes, events are really important because to build a community, you need to meet face to face. So this is the human touch for sure. Something that I'm trying to do, and this goes back to membership, that me, even you, the OMGKRK team should not be the sort of gatekeepers or traffic points in connectivity. Although we have our personal knowledge and experience, and we can do the intros or whatever. I think it's very important to open this up and allow for peer-to-peer, B2B communication that isn't reliant on some personal connection with us, because that's very limiting. And you're saying, you're looking at a database and you're not really sure, who's credible or not. But via this process of membership, we are trying to act on this, because in this base you can look, the people at the top of the base are people who are supporting OMGKRK at various levels, and they've gone through an onboarding process. We have now a profile post of all our members, so we and everyone gets to learn about them. In the base, they're highlighted as a member, meaning that we know them personally and they've done something for us and for the community. And this is sort of a stamp of that these people are engaged in the community and credible. And also, as part of the membership, there's a name and an email associated with the organization, and that person is ready to be contacted regarding what they're doing. So this really opens it up for some sort of bottleneck in my or your inbox to people really connecting with each other directly.
Yes, I think it is a delicate balance. I'm just looking on the website to see if I can find the link to. I'm just going to post a link. I put a link up to the ambassador role, which is something that I've been very proud and honored to support this idea that I can represent, not as a full-time job, but along the way when I'm going somewhere, if I'm in a different city and I'm talking about what's going on in Krakow, I can explain about the startup community, or so I can bring people to town, put them in touch with you if I see there's an opportunity for partnership. But I'm just putting up the OMG Become a Member thing because that's now on the screen, and I'll post that underneath the Facebook Live. So, and I know, and you know, in terms of having a sustainable business model, it's good to have members of the local community who who are successful, who are, let's say, because different companies have, like at the beginning of a startup journey, when someone's bootstrapping, you can't expect them to put a serious amount of their scarce zloty into supporting the community. But for someone who's making money part of the community, it's a very reasonable thing for them to feel that it's a kind of corporate social responsibility to support things like OMGKRK. So in terms of one goal for the next year or two, you want to build the number of members who are making a financial commitment to the community, don't you?
Yeah, well, I think membership is so essential for a number of reasons, and I guess I'll try to tie in some of the threads that we've been talking about. Let's start with like the first one that you mentioned about Tarnów, that all the people that think that the ambitious people are leaving Tarnów because there's nothing happening, or not enough great things happening. And I think some people will make the case that the ambitious people are leaving Krakow. They're gonna go to Warsaw, Berlin, even further west, because they don't feel that there's world-class things happening here. And at OMGKRK, I really want to say I really believe that we offer a mission of building a world-class innovation ecosystem that should attract, motivate, and keep the top talent here in Krakow. Like, we have this huge, powerful mission that I think can be a potential game changer, but we need a lot of support in realizing this mission, because it's easy to say, it's very hard to do, and it's not going to be achieved by me or you. It's going to take the entire community to mobilize and to do. So we've created a sort of structure for how this is going to happen. We've created a way to pitch it, where on the one hand, the membership goes to supporting our activities of building this ecosystem on the back of products like the pitch, where we share events, the database, where we highlight all these businesses and organizations, and events where we try to inspire and educate entrepreneurship. On the other hand, before I get into some other details on that, but also, for example, we want to really increase connectivity in this ecosystem, in the sense of how do you get more output with the same input. And we believe if there's more connectivity, if everyone's more aware of what's going on, if we can do matchmaking in the ecosystem, we will start increasing the output with the same input, and this will actually attract more talent companies and more ambitious startups to be cropping up in Krakow, which will continue elevating the ecosystem. But it really takes the community's involvement and engagement on a variety of levels to do this, because the impact of one person, at OMGKRK, we're a very lean team, we're a small team, and I think we make a large impact for a small team. But things are really going to start to grow once we start onboarding formally more people on the community. And also, something you mentioned is, what Tarnów needs is cyclical events, and Krakow needs that too. And you've been here longer than I, but I'm sure you've seen where key people leave an event or an organization, the thing collapses. Because it was built on too much on one or two individual shoulders. And through membership, you create a roadmap to sustainability, where there's an institution in place, where there's just a big structure in place that there is some sort of revenue for operations, and also to pay people, because money is sort of hygiene and also motivating, and you really want talented people at the center of building the community. Also, you have you will get more output with the same input if decision makers are networking with other decision makers. And via membership, we basically identify decision makers and organizations and bring them into other contact with other decision makers. So this is something happening. And beyond that, as part of membership, um, we do brand awareness, we can do recruitment, and we can do deal flow, which I think a lot of the companies in the ecosystem are looking for. And we can definitely be, OMGKRK can definitely be another unique channel for these needs. And once we start
Just to cut in there, because we've got a question from our Facebook Live audience here, which is Kamal Wapata, who's a key person in the Open Coffee Krakow organizers, asked what can a new member of OMGKRK, not an ambassador, do to support OMGKRK? And I would say beyond subscribing and, if they're, let's say, beyond giving money, what else can they do? Because, money is kind of obvious, but what else could someone do?
I think they can contribute their skill, time, and energy. I mean,
skill, time, and energy, that's a lot. Money is one thing, but like commitment and passion, putting your heart into it, I think is so important, because, it's one thing for people to be neutral about it. What you mentioned about the talent leaving town, we're pro success, right? We want people to be successful. If someone people like Pavel Novak, he's got startups in town. He went to Berlin for Techstars. He's in town now. He's worked in different startups. We need people to be successful and for Krakow to be part of their success. And, I think there are many, many examples. Krakow isn't the only place in the world. We're also incredibly fortunate that Krakow is one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. So it's a great place. It's not just a place to do business and create a lot of value. It's also a really fun, interesting place to live. And I know you're keen to include art and culture as part of, the startup community. You've got one or two events which, like in cool clubs like Spitalny Jeden, which is, I suppose, Hospital One. Spitalny Jeden, it sounds a bit strange, but Spitalny Jeden is a club, and you've done events sort of in the clubbing scene. So it's also about the quality of life, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think as we started this conversation, Krakow is an outstanding place to live. In the winter, we do have this public health challenge with the smog, but a group of people in Krakow got together and tried to do something about that with Smogathon, whose grand finale is coming up this month. So we are, I think, at least in the startup community, solution-oriented people who really are not complainers but doers. And Swagathon is one of my favorite examples. It gave rise to another great startup, Airly, which is also trying to tackle this smog issue. And regarding so I really believe, and I would say it might be the formal approach, that innovation requires diversity. If you have 5 people with the same worldview and same skill set around the table, how innovative is the product or service that you create going to be? It's probably not. But the more diverse, the more different that team will be, I think the potential for creating something really unique and special rises. So something
I'm really glad. We've slightly overrun, but these are important topics, and I was a kind of victim of diversity. That as you know, it's always a challenge to have great quality speakers. At a TEDx event, we can we do literally put hundreds of hours into preparing the speakers to make sure that on the day they do well. For a startup community event where you've got a volunteer team and you've maybe got 20-30 minutes with the speaker before they go on stage to try and make sure they do a good job, we can't always manage that. And we had a spectacular example at Krakow Enterprise Mondays where an uncurated speaker paid for by the government, unbelievably, said that the best place to, like, his best advice to a startup from Poland was to go to New York. You had a government official encouraging people to leave the country. I intervened to point out that Poland is 27th in the world on the World Bank list of ease of doing business now. Like, for all the grumbles about the bureaucracy, we're in the top 30 globally. We're ahead of some Western European countries. And, it may not be easy, but it's all so much better than it was. And he literally didn't know that Poland's so highly ranked. So sometimes the diversity of opinion can be a challenge, that people tell you things you don't want to hear, but also you need to be open to that, if there's a perception out there that Poland's a terrible place to do business, then it's great to have that out there, because someone can challenge it. So I think having contrary points of view is important. And I'm really glad that you raised the perspective of diversity, because historically Poland was a multicultural country with people from many different ethnicities, and Krakow was a trading center with people from all over Europe and the world. And as a result of some terrible history, Poland became quite mono-ethnic, but Krakow is a very international city, a very diverse city now. So in a sense, we're going back to our historic roots. So just to wrap up, because we've slightly overrun our time, if you think about where we're going and what message you've got to the Project Kazimierz audience, where would you love the Krakow startup community to be in 2 or 3 years' time? And what message do you have to our listeners?
Oh man. Well, I would say that for Project Kazimierz listeners, that if you haven't heard of OMGKRK, or not really engaged in the startup community and are sort of on the fence about it, to really give it a chance, go on our website, poke around, see what's interesting to you, and just really check out an event and see for yourself what's going on. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. For people who are already in the community and active, I'd really encourage you to take a deeper look at what OMGKRK is doing, and if you want to support our work, really encourage you to take Richard, a look at what OMGKRK is doing. And if you want to, yeah. So if you like what we're doing, to really support as Richard, I'm feedback from your side.
Yeah. Sorry, I managed to switch on the speaker for the live stream for a moment. Apologies for that. And apologies.
And really, I don't really, although I'm in the middle of this, I don't really have too much. I don't have a really strong ideology. I'm really pragmatic. I really want to crowdsource the vision for this community, and this membership, especially at the stakeholder level, which you are, Richard, and a deep appreciation and thanks for that. We can together create a vision and roadmap to where we want to be. And I think it's really entrepreneurship at the front, tech entrepreneurship, but not only, innovative ideas. And overall, I'm incredibly positive on Poland. I'm positive on Krakow. I know that maybe at the national level, the politics are perhaps more emotional than we would like it. But I think Poland is a place of opportunity for entrepreneurs. There's really a lot of space in Poland. I think there's not a lot of competition in Poland. I think for anyone with motivation in any field, I'm talking from startup to nightlife to design to anything. There's a lot of space in Poland. You may have to build a market for yourself. You may have to sort of groom an audience for what you're doing, and that's that's the hard part, because you can't there you have to do that as well. But Poland has had 20 years of uninterrupted economic growth. It's rated as uh, the best place to invest outside of Southeast Asia. um, Life here is nice. The people are friendly, and a tremendous amount of opportunity in Krakow and in Poland. I really believe that, and I encourage everyone to take advantage of that, to think big, and to get to work.
Project Kazimierz listeners, you heard the people are nice, the place is beautiful, the opportunities are tremendous. I don't think we could end on a better note than that. I have been posting links. I'm just posting up a final link. If you want to listen to this podcast later, there's a subscribe link. It's in the can. That means it'll go out in 2 or 3 weeks' time now for the audio audience. But if you come to our Facebook page, Project Kazimierz, on Facebook, you can see this and a number of other live videos of previous live interviews. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure that we will bump into each other within the next few days. And if anyone listening anywhere around the world is heading towards Krakow, do get in touch with OMGKRK, their website or the Facebook presence. Get in touch with me, and we'll be delighted to tell you what we think is the best thing to do when you're in town, because almost every day there's something fantastic going on in Krakow. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.